Share Radio Afternoon with Glenn Goodman.
Now, we're told to keep an ear to the ground, but what about an eye on the sky? Dr. Adam Fish is not only a senior lecturer in sociology at Lancaster University, but also an exponent of the use of drones by the public. And writing in The Guardian, he's warned of the creeping privatisation of Britain's airspace. Creepy. Share Radio's Alex Clark spoke to Adam, firstly asking whether the privatisation that he warns of is in the public interest.
I'm not fundamentally opposed against regulation and that assists in business development. I just think that the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority, is in a cozy relationship with Amazon, and they are delegating something that we should see as a public resource, as a kind of atmospheric commons, which is the air, which is all the air that we breathe, and a space that we increasingly as public citizens can engage with drones, with kites, with various things. And I see the CAA, kind of going about a process of privatization, delegating this important resource to private industries such as Amazon, without appropriate public oversight, without public discussion, without even considering this as a resource that we all collectively share, that we should collectively self-govern. So I'm not against privatization.
Could you give us a few examples of these supposed, I guess it's kind of like they're bending the rules for Amazon but not for us. Can you give some examples of that?
Drones are now filling the skies. I mean, the skies are becoming saturated with these flying computers that have very sophisticated payloads on them, like video-enabled cameras, different things like that. And it's got a lot of governments and a lot of citizens worried for good reason. These things are dangerous, they're hard to fly, and various governments around the world are implementing and devising various codes with which pilots should fly by. Some are rather liberal and some are rather strict. So, for instance, in Nairobi, drones are completely outlawed. In Sweden, building off of a kind of privacy ordinance, they've made video-enabled drones illegal. But in the UK, you have a much more liberal space. And you could see, the mayor of London and various London-based politicians trying to devise England as a place for disruption, as a place for technological innovation, and they're making it a warm and comfortable space for private industry to be able to deploy drones for delivery of packages, such as we're seeing in Amazon. And most recently, this new building called the Spire, which is going to be the second biggest building in London, is advocating for the CAA to give them clearance to have these very expensive penthouses up at the top of the building be able to receive packages from various delivery services down below. So I'm just worried that as the regulatory bodies rush to give corporate exemptions to some of these regulations to be able to access the air, that hobbyists, journalists, and the general public is being excluded from these debates. And right now, we may not see the air as being saturated with objects. We might be excited by the idea of having Amazon deliver our Christmas goods to us. And I can understand that being exciting. But I'm more worried about the future in which various strata of the atmosphere, various kind of columns within the space above us are being delegated for the exclusive use of particular kind of corporate activity, to the exclusion of public use.
Yes, I'd actually quite like to get into some of these public uses. From your article, I was very interested by the journalism which has utilized drone technology. Could you get into that kind of use of drones?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that social scientists, journalists, engaged citizens that are worried about what the powerful and elite are doing with taxpayer money can utilize and should utilize any technology that they can get their hands on. Drones, unmanned aerial vehicles such as these that are relatively affordable for someone in the middle class or someone that has a small budget for their kind of research or their kind of journalistic activity can acquire one of these devices. And they provide a certain amount of counterpower to politicians and different individuals who want to reserve the right for privacy and secrecy. And so I've seen journalists utilize drones in the field to do activities such as what we call counter surveillance, which is monitoring the police during protest movements. Case in point is the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, where they're trying to put forth a oil pipeline through this Indian reservation. Native Americans and their sympathizers and activists that are part of this community have utilized drones to monitor the police doing what many of us think is being rather unscrupulous activity, such as using mace, using rubber bullets, using high-powered water cannons, and various things to try to repress the protest movement that's trying to stop this oil pipeline. But the activists have been using drones to try to document this kind of abuse of power that the police are deploying in this situation. In retaliation, the police officers and their sympathetic politicians have put pressure on the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Authority, to create a no-fly zone around these sites of political protest so that they can force, through law, these airborne journalists to not be able to use their drones in acts of counter-surveillance and acts recording the abuse of power by the police. And so this is really worrisome, right? If the police and various instantiations of political power can refuse these tools of transparency